views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Hey there, welcome to the Bronx Buzz. This is the program where we talk to Bronx journalists, Bronx writers, Bronx photographers sometimes, and give you a little insight as to what they're thinking about when they report, what they're about in terms of how they view the Bronx, and gives you a chance to kind of get inside the news, inside the buzz, as it were. Tonight, we have a really interesting show for kind of a good and bad news reason. The good news is that a good friend of mine and a colleague has gotten a really good job. The bad news is that Erin Clark of New York One is going to be leaving New York One, literally beginning Friday. And so she is going to join us right now on the telephone. And actually, we're going to spend a moment or two with Erin Clark, and she will get a chance to say goodbye to the Bronx. Erin, nice to have you with us.
Oh, Gary, thanks so much for having me. I am so sad. This is really a bittersweet moment because I've come to love everyone and everything about the Bronx. And so I leave for a great opportunity. I don't want to leave you guys behind.
We all appreciate that. Let's start with the good news. So you got a job and you're going to be going to Pittsburgh?
That's right. I went to undergrad in Pittsburgh, University of My mom grew up in the city, so I visited several times throughout my childhood. And so it's kind of a return to a second home. I'll be working at the NBC affiliate, which is called WPXI in Pittsburgh.
Well, now I have new respect for WPXI in Pittsburgh. They are so smart. So for you, this is a really good thing. You'll be working at a network, kind of moving up in your career. We talked about that you got a little bit of a contract, and that's nice. Do you know what you're going to be covering? Is there going to be a beat? Or there's no Bronx there, but are they going to give you an area or just general assignment?
So there's no Bronx definitely up there, but I will not have a specific beat like I've been covering for the last 5 years here in New York One. I'll be, for the most part, a general assignment reporter, but the state has a heavy emphasis on what we as journalists like to call enterprise reporting, which is really, in a sense, kind of like beat reporting, in which you fine tune and focus in on certain subjects and topics. That's what I'm really looking forward to. I'm looking forward to finding some people, some neighborhoods, and some issues that are important to the folks out in Pittsburgh, here in the Bronx.
There's no question that your kind of background of doing what you have done in the Bronx is a very good background for doing just that, because that's exactly what you've done. And that gives us a good chance to start asking you about, so what kinds of stories do you like? And then, of course, that would feed back is what were the kinds of favorite stories that you did while you were at New York One over the last 5 years?
So I stories, and one might say, well, every story has people in it, but I like a story to be able to be told from the perspective of the residents of the Bronx. I'm not necessarily hearing from the officials or the politicians, but the people who are really affected by whether it's a problem, an issue, or who are happy about something. One of the last stories that I did that a lot of people were happy about was Zorro's reopening in Parkchester. And while it was great to have the borough president and Senator Diaz there as well, it was great to hear from people who live in the neighborhood and were starving for Zorro's to come back to the neighborhood. And so when I say people stories, I like people to be the focus of the stories.
Let's rewind a little bit. So that was a recent favorite. Do you go back when somebody says to you, hey, you worked at New York One, what did you cover or what did you like? What were the 1 or 2 stories that really were memorable, or things that you learned from and things you really enjoyed?
Oh my gosh, there's been so many stories that I've covered over the
I know,
more
I
than
put
5
you
years
right
I've
on the
been here.
spot.
But the first stories that come to mind are the type of stories in which I got to show a different side of the Bronx, perhaps got to visit a place where most people don't have access to. So, right when I started working at New York One, I began working with the Hart Island Project and some folks that were really pushing to open up access to Hart Island, where the city's Potter's Field is. And about a year ago, I got an opportunity to actually board the ferry and visit Hart
Right.
Island with a camera. And it's such a magical place. It's such a beautiful place that so
Wow.
few people get an opportunity to see. And that would have been one of my favorite stories. Another favorite was visiting another island, North Brother Island, which
Wow.
is completely off access to the public. But there's a push by the city council to try to open up access, at least for young people, for children to come on school trips. And that's a hauntingly beautiful island. There's still some very old buildings there that look kind of spooky. And it was just fun to spend a day there and tell the history of this place.
And it was real reporting because you were literally discovering places that nobody else had discovered before. And I mean, I know what that feels like, that you really feel like you're responsible to tell people a story about something they would never have known or had any other way of seeing. That's exciting.
Absolutely.
You know, let's just talk a little bit about the job of being a reporter. Now, had you worked on the air anywhere prior to New York One? I don't even know if I ever asked you that question.
I did. Before my 5 years at New York One, I worked with New York One's sister station in Syracuse. New York
Ah,
One has several sister stations throughout New York State, in North Carolina, and Texas. So I worked upstate for 2 years. Before that, I did a little work at News 12 Long Island as a freelancer. I hosted a show called Diverse Long Island, and it really focused on, it was a talk show, kind of like what you do with Bronx Talk, and it focused on issues that were important to the minority communities on Long Island. And then before that, I worked at the Fox affiliate, WICZ TV in Binghamton.
ah,
So I've been in
you've
the
been around a
business
little
now
bit.
for about,
So
yeah, for
uh,
about 10 years.
I asked you that for a reason, and the reason is the craft of reporting, and many of us in the Bronx who have seen you all over the Bronx. You know, in the business we call it one-man banding. So you would have to run your own camera and do that. And listen, we're not talking out of turn. It's it's an extra burden for reporters, and journalists don't love that. But I'm willing to bet that those skills that you learn doing that are going to serve you well working anywhere else, because you'll know what the camera person is going through when you work with them. Uh,
Absolutely. I mean, I'm happy to say that I won't have to shoot my own work anymore at the new job, but it's something that while I'm happy I won't have to do it, I will miss it a little bit, because when you're shooting your own work as a one man or one gal band, I should say, it's all your own work and you're proud of it. You know the video you shot and you can write to that video, and that makes you that much more proud of the product that you put out.
Do you think, I was going to ask, do you think, but I'm going to change the way I'm going to ask this. So, talk to me about your growth as a reporter. In other words, there's no question your work gets better. All of our work gets better every day, I think we all like to think. But what do you think you really learned and developed because you were a Bronx reporter?
I think that I developed a better understanding for issues in urban communities. And that might sound odd coming from someone who was born and raised in the city. I was born and
Yeah,
raised
right.
in Brooklyn, but for most of my career, I've worked upstate New York. And so, working in somewhere that is more of an urban community, there were issues that affect folks in the Bronx that you can take these issues and they're a microcosm of what's going on in the rest of the country. So, for instance, when we're talking about the fact that the Bronx has the highest asthma rate because of all of the truck traffic that's coming through neighborhoods in the South Bronx, well, I was taking a look at some of the stories that my future colleagues in Pittsburgh have done. And for those of you who don't know, Pittsburgh was a big coal mining town.
Right.
And a story was done just a couple of weeks ago about how children in Pittsburgh, in a particular neighborhood, are just finding out that they have the highest asthma rate in that
Right.
surrounding community. And so that's what I mean. I've learned that these issues are not just one and only to the Bronx or one and only to the city. They are issues that affect everyone throughout the country. And if I was able to learn what I did from the folks of the Bronx, then I'm that much better. and that
Well,
much more of a reporter.
there's no question about it. And just what you explained to me, they are really getting, a really good reporter, somebody who knows their stuff. Of course, you'll learn more about Pittsburgh. Now, can I reveal the personal thing that we have between us that I think you discovered? It's just the craziest. It just shows.
Oh my gosh,
Can I
it's such a
reveal
small
that?
world. Of course you can.
Okay, so I'll tell it, even though you're the one who discovered. So Erin looked at Facebook one day, and I had posted something about a summer camp I had gone to when I was a child, and I don't even want to tell you how many years ago it was. And Erin called me up and said, "Hey Gary, it's Camp Eagle Hill. Did you go to Camp Eagle Hill?" And I said, "Well, yeah, because it's one of the foundations of my development as a person." And now you can fill in the last part of the story.
Well, Gary, you don't have it 100% correct.
No?
What happened is I was driving to Vermont, or I was riding to Vermont, so I wasn't looking at my phone while I was driving, but I was
Okay.
in a car riding to Vermont, and we passed the exit that I would get off to go to
Oh.
Camp Eagle Hill, and I said to my boyfriend, "Oh, this is near where the summer camp I used to go to. Let me look it up and see what's going on with Camp Eagle Hill."
Ah.
And as most people know on Facebook, when you look up a friend or a site, it usually shows you the people that you have in common. And your name was the
There
first
it
that
was.
popped up.
And you were like, "Oh
And
my
so-
goodness."
And so right after that, I called you or texted you and said, "Hey, did you go to Camp Eagle Hill?"
So
And that's where we discovered
we-
we both had gone to the camp, and it was very formative for both of us. I
Well, no
think.
question about it. Let's just review because I was there from, goodness gracious, it's embarrassing, 68 to 75 maybe, and you were there many years later.
I
You
would
don't have to
say
say if you
probably
don't
no, I mean, I can't remember the years off the top of my head, but I went from first grade to
Wow.
seventh grade, so
Wow.
probably in the early to mid 90s. Yeah.
So we were brought up in the same place, twin sons or daughters of different mothers or whatever it was. Listen, Erin,
6 degrees of separation.
that's the way to do it. We all in the Bronx will miss you. We have cherished everything you have done for us at New York One. And I know you and I will stay in touch as friends and colleagues. And I know everybody in the Bronx wishes you well, and you'll do great in Pittsburgh, and they are really lucky to have you.
Well, thank you so much. I hope that everyone in the Bronx stays in touch, whether it's through social media or shooting me an email if you can find me. But you guys are my heart, and I thank you for
Thank you,
allowing
sir.
me to tell your stories for the last 5 years.
Erin, you're the best. Have a great time. And maybe I'll even see you tomorrow night. Good night. See you.
Thanks,
Take care.
Gary.
All right.
Bye-bye.
She was actually out there doing a story, and she took the time out to call us, and I really appreciated that she did that. We are going to take a break. We're going to be back with maybe a more traditional interview with David Cruz, the editor of the Norwood News. In the meantime, I want you to take a look at this piece that BronxNet did about the very important hurricane relief effort in Puerto Rico. So we'll be right back, and you'll enjoy this. Don't go away.
Early Wednesday on September 20th, Category 4 Hurricane Maria made a direct landfall on Puerto Rico, bisecting the entire island, leaving 60% of the island without water and power, according to New York Times. In light of that catastrophic event, Bronx Borough President Ruben Diaz Jr. hosted a party to celebrate Puerto Ricans who have made a mark on the city and the groups that have helped in the collection drive of goods to Puerto Rico at Bronx Community College.
Look, this is an incredible celebration. The borough president does it every year, but it takes a greater significance after everything that is going on in Puerto Rico, so many families suffering. But we have to take a moment to celebrate our heritage, who we are as a people, and so many Puerto Ricans who have contributed so much to our city, state, and nation, and we've had some incredible honorees.
The honorees are exceptional, and when you look at our pioneers, you know, once again, when you're celebrating culture and when you celebrate heritage, you would be remiss if you didn't pay homage to those that are pioneers.
To be honored, 41 years in the fire department, and it was much appreciated. Being a Puerto Rican myself and raising a Puerto Rican family, so I was very honored.
I got sentimental with that. After 55 years of being in the music, I'm recording 300 long planes, so I'm one of the most recorded Puerto Ricans in the world. So
I'm very honored to find that he's a wonderful fan of my own, and to get the proclamation from him is just really, really flattering. Being the meteorologist, I was very much on the forefront of everything as it happened and watching it. unfold, which was so heartbreaking being Puerto Rican and watching the island pretty much being decimated by Hurricane Maria. But it's so wonderful, all the love and growth that has come from this experience. I mean, Puerto Rico is going to be better than ever.
We raised over 300,000 pounds of supplies and material for Puerto Rico. We were able to send it via containers and ships and airplanes.
And this celebration is one of the ways the Bronx Borough President and others want to reaffirm their support to Puerto Rico. For BronxNet, I am Katie Loy Knight.
But when my owner lost his job, it was rough. I was living on the street, and one night, me and this Cocker Spaniel got into it so bad, I wound up looking like an ice cream cone. I cried a little bit, but thankfully I got rescued, so I'm running, I'm jumping, all back to my old self. And I'm ready to give unconditional love, even if you put a lampshade on my head.
It's not always easy being a dad.
Do you have panda asthma too? Does that run in the family?
This is the home of the most priceless kung fu artifacts.
But when you make an effort,
Dad, we're not supposed to touch anything. Oh, sorry.
Go long, son!
it's always worth it.
Whoa, master!
The smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life. Take time to be a dad today.
I am gonna get you. I'm gonna get you.
Call 877-4DAD-411 or visit fatherhood.gov to learn more.
Really to talk with Erin Clark. She got to say our goodbyes for the Bronx. David Cruz is here for the Norwood News. Before we talk about your issues and the Norwood News, Erin was a really important person in the Bronx, wasn't she?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Erin's a very, very thorough, very, very personable reporter, which is something I think
you don't always get that.
You don't always get that,
person.
exactly. And I personally will miss Erin. It kind of came as a surprise. I mean, like these things always do, you know. You never know until the announcement is actually made.
And people want to move on and move up. I mean, obviously, it's a very good thing for her. But yeah, she became part of the scenario in the Bronx, part of the family, as it were, in Bronx media. So a lot of things going on in the Norwood News. I made some notes, but this is really outside the Norwood News. First of all, you now have some position in the New York Press Club. So David Cruz has moved up a step or two.
A couple of notches, yeah. I sit now on the Board of Governors. The president of the Press Club had appointed me to sit on the Board of Governors, replacing the legendary Gabe Pressman, which was...
Those are pretty big shoes to step
Oh,
in.
yeah. When I told him in the email, I said, I don't know if I can really fill in those shoes, but I'll do my very best, because Gabe was fantastic. He was quite the newsman.
He invented New York City news, in essence. Talk to me about what you would need to do. So basically, you'd be working with other journalists and deal with issues that come up between journalists. I mean, that's what that's about.
Correct. I mean, there's 16, if I'm not mistaken, members on the Board of Governors. They essentially decide the direction of where the club wants to go in terms of recruitment, in terms of events, event planning, and also sort of leading up to their big event, which is the journalism conference, where they hold these events.
Congratulations, David.
Thank you.
It's nice that you're part of the fabric of it, as it were, of New York news, and you've earned it certainly for the work you've done at the Norwood News. Also, one non-Norwood news story: there is a New York City News Summit.
Correct.
That I guess that either happened or it's going to happen.
It's going to happen.
And what is that about?
It's going to happen this Sunday at the CUNY Graduate School of Journalism. The school officials there had organized a New York City News Summit in light of what happened with DNA Info and Gothamist. They were abruptly closed, and so they've reached out to reporters and editors around the New York City media to determine how to go about developing a sort of the next model of news gathering, something along the same vein.
So that's some of the coverage that we, for example, in the Bronx really valued, doesn't get doesn't just go away like that.
Correct.
Right?
Well, they also want to see they basically want to create a new business approach to news gathering, because at the moment the advertising model is just not sustainable anymore.
And so when is that?
That's
Uncle Gary may want to go too.
Well, apparently, from what I understand, it's an invitation-only kind
Oh,
of.
well, now that I know somebody on the New York Press Club Board of Governors, they'll invite me.
Yeah, so I'm really looking forward to it because I saw the list of names.
Tell us when it is.
Oh, I said it's this Sunday.
Oh, this Sunday?
Yeah, December 3rd.
Nice. December 3rd. All right. Dave, let's get into the Norwood News. You have done incredible reporting on the Kingsbridge National Ice Center, and the next step in the process was that loan, that $130 million loan from the state. You reported it as finally approved. Where does that put this project right now?
Now it essentially puts it back to the developers. The developers will have to start looking for construction firms to actually begin.
So in other words, they've gotten permission to begin the process of building.
Correct.
One would think that after all this time of waiting and trying to develop it, that they pretty much know how they're going to run
Well, they're
it out.
simply securing the construction firms to actually go about to do the work, and they have to present that once again to the city. The city's not 100% giving them the lease.
They haven't signed the lease yet.
Correct.
Wow, it's still
got a ways. But the biggest hurdle was actually getting this money.
In the people that you talk to, do you get the sense that the city is ready to say, okay, get this stuff in line and we're going to do it, or there still will be further dialogue about the suitability of these particular developers and other issues, or you don't know yet?
No, just it's the former. They really want to work with Koenig to actually see this thing through, but they're not wanting to give up a lease, a 99-year lease, that easily. They really want to make sure that all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted. Otherwise, they're essentially left with this 99-year lease and no progress for the building.
The Norwood News, not only with you, but with your predecessors, has done incredibly great work with housing and landlords who are not doing the right thing. The public advocate came out with her list of New York City's worst landlords, and Dave in the Norwood News did this story here on Norwood's worst landlord. And then we're going to talk about this chart that you put together. Talk to me about this whole aspect of it and what your vision is of this worst landlord's watch list.
Well, the worst landlord's watch list, obviously, it's going through the entire city of New York, and our way of localizing it was just looking to see whether or not any buildings in Norwood actually had a bad landlord. And so, of course, we looked at the map, and it did. There were two, and they were both managed by the same agent. His name is Narcine Desai. And just by default, the public advocate considers him a landlord because his name is he's considered the head officer for the LLC that's representing the real owner. And of course, with LLCs, limited liability corporations, you have no idea who the owner is. And so he, unfortunately, Mr. Desai kind of became the fall guy.
Did you get to talk to them?
We tried reaching out to them. We called their office at Norwest Realty LLC, and of course we were stonewalled.
So the public advocate puts out this list, and many people in the Bronx know exactly who it is. They would know their own buildings and say that we know who the bad landlords are. Is there any follow-up? Is there any dealing with the fact, okay, now we know you are the worst landlords, let's fix up these buildings, or are we not in that point right now?
No, they are. I mean, at the press conference down at near City Hall, Public Advocate James was essentially saying that last year's top 10 worst landlords, 6 of them have been removed from the top 10.
Removed because they've done a better job.
Because they've made improvements.
Well, that sounds like a good thing.
Correct. It's more of a shaming list. There's nothing enforceable. I mean, obviously, some are actually being taken to court, especially the number 1 worst landlord in the city, being taken to housing court right now, although they're based in Brooklyn, so there's no real connection to the borough here.
You did this study, and I just mentioned it, and you pointed it out to me, this chart And I think it's fascinating. So, people in the Bronx can guess what is the zip code with the most open HPD violations, and that is 10453.
10453, right? And that is, right.
Is the Tremont neighborhood. Go ahead.
Correct. That's only because the worst landlord for the Bronx is over there, and he has about 968 violations.
It's an unbelievable number. And 968, we've been through this for years about this.
Right, and some of these violations have been open for years. Years.
Wow. And then if we've done the bad news, we may as well do the good news, and that is the zip code with the least open HPD violations. I was happy to see that it's 1074, which is in Hunts Point.
Right.
And I guess the stereotype would be that it's not being taken care of properly.
Don't be confused by the list now. Here's the problem. The problem is that some people may not know what their rights are. And so the people who are actually filing these complaints know that they have to file it with the city of New York. A place like Hunts Point, there may be people who don't know.
It could be a language barrier
Correct.
or other things. So you're just stating the fact that this is the one with the least. But, it's like looking at sexual harassment numbers or rape numbers. Sometimes it's based on how many actually got reported.
Exactly.
Well, okay, but it's a start.
That is a start. I agree with you.
You also did a story about, and this is fascinating, and I always wondered about this sort of thing, is that packages from the post office don't get delivered properly because many Bronx buildings are locked. And how, you can't give a key to every mailman. And so the post office is saying, look, you may not get your presents or your packages on time for the holiday.
Right, and at the moment, the U.S. Postal Service officials are actually going around every community board and telling them on the hopes that they can share it with their communities that mailmen and package delivery persons working for USPS will not be able to deliver the packages if they have no way of entering the building. The protocol is they leave a notice essentially telling them that a package is waiting for you.
It's being left in the street in
Right.
essence. Anybody would take it or,
You go at your own risk. And so, but they're saying it now because the holiday rush is right around the corner. If not, it's here right now. And so the post offices will be overburdened with all these leftover packages.
And we're almost out of time, but one of the things of interest is that there are technical things you could do, but somebody's going to have to pay, whether you have an auto key lock or something else that the mail carriers can use. But again, who would pay for that? The post office is not going to pay for it.
They said they're not going to pay for
Right.
it, and they're pushing it on to the management, which of course would probably put it on
raise rents.
the tenants.
Yeah, we really need higher rents in the Bronx. What do you got for the next? This was the current edition that's expiring. What do you got for the next edition?
Well, we're still looking into the Jerome Avenue rezoning. Another hurdle was crossed, and so it's just becoming even closer.
So you'll have a story on that this coming. David Cruz, always happy to have you on the show, and you're just a great guest, and you're really doing a great job. And now, as on the board of managers of the New York City Press Club, you carry a little more weight, and that's a good thing.
Thank you.
And we will both say goodbye to Erin Clark from New York One, and good luck, and she'll do very well wherever she goes, and she'll bring the Bronx with her wherever she goes. And you and I and he will bring the Bronx wherever we go as well. We'll see you next week. Good night.